everything been coming along?
So I've been studying for the LSAT for a while, and I reached a high point, and then for some reason in the last month I've been just going lower. So my LSAT studies have been getting worse despite studying more. So right now I'm really struggling with my LSAT prep since my test is going to be in August. Originally, I wanted to do it in June, but I didn't feel ready for it, so I pushed it back to August and have been studying more. I've actually been studying on and off since October. And then I started in January seriously studying at least 1-2 hours a couple times a week. And then I bumped it up to like 4 hours a week in the past month, and have been seeing my scores go lower. So right now I'm really struggling with my LSAT prep.
I hear you. Yeah. So you said 4 hours a week?
Not a week, a day.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do those 4 hours look like? When are they taking place over the course of the day?
So I study before I go to work and when I come home. So I study from 7 to 8:30. And then when I come home, I study from 4 or 4:30 for 2.5 hours.
Okay. And what do you do during the time that you're studying?
So I do drills or I review my tests. Sometimes I take time to review my tests from the that I took the week prior, which honestly I'm struggling a lot with the review process and identifying why I got answers wrong. What else? Sometimes I'll watch like videos to help me or explain. Lately, I've been watching. Lately, I've been watching your logic games videos, and they help me understand logic games a little bit more since I started taking your mastermind, or not mastermind, the course, and that's been helping me with logic games. But I'll watch videos or I'll do drills, and yeah, and I have a hard time struggling the whole time, but I allot that time to focus on just studying and not allow myself to do anything else. So I have a really hard time concentrating when I'm struggling with my questions. Sometimes I'll just doze off, even though I'm trying to force myself to stay focused. And yeah, that's about it.
No, I hear what you're saying there. It's hard to go through this process. It's
Yeah.
natural that you might doze off, your mind might wander. I think that happens to a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a deliberate, concentrated effort to focus on this stuff because it's dense.
Mm-hmm.
About the review process, you said that you're struggling there. What does
Yeah.
your review process currently look like?
So right now I try to figure out like why I got a question wrong. And sometimes I can point it out. Like I read a question wrong, or I didn't read the stimulus correctly, or I misunderstood the entire stimulus. That's for logical reasoning. And so I will go back and try and figure out like, why did I get it wrong or why did I get it right? Usually I can figure out why I got it right, but not why I got it wrong. Sometimes it'll feel nice when I can finally understand why I got something wrong so I can fix it. In logic games, it's not as bad. I can understand why I got a question wrong or right more because I just redo the whole game if I review. And I will redo it until I get it right for the games. For logical reasoning and reading comprehension, which are my worst sections, I struggle to figure out why I got it wrong. And especially in reading comp, just reading that entire passage for structure in the limited time I have makes it harder for me to understand the entire passage and then why I got the questions wrong. So my review process is a little more shallow than I want it to be because I know it takes a long time to review. But I find it hard to just do it for every single question, or even when I'm doing my test, I'll circle the ones that I really struggled with and go over those. Those are the ones that most of them I still cannot understand why I got them wrong.
Well, it's good that you're noting the specific ones that you got wrong.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to review every single question you complete.
Yeah.
It's placing far too large an obligation on yourself. So if we narrow and target the ones that gave you difficulty, whether you got them right or wrong, even if you guessed and got lucky, because it could have gone the other way, we focus on those questions specifically. There could still be a good number of those. It could still take a while, but at least you're narrowing the scope already. Now, what if we could change the nature of your review process such that it engaged you more rather than looking at explanation and kind of dozing off?
Yeah, that's what I struggle with more. The most is like while I'm reviewing it, I will doze off because I'm just not, it's like so hard. So my brain wants to like shut off. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm like, I want to understand this. I tell myself that, but then I do the opposite and I like retract and like shut off.
I know what you mean. The same thing happens to me. The same thing happens to me actually still. Yeah. It takes a deliberate conscious effort to stay with it instead of being like glazing over and then thinking like, is that even a word? Like I thought it was a word, but now it's not looking like one. I get where you're coming from there. We just need to have a structure in place. Multiple structures, actually. We need structures for games, reasoning, reading comp in terms of the initial approach of the question. And then also for reviewing these questions after the fact. So, for example, every time I see a logical reasoning question, where's the conclusion in the stimulus? Yeah. And before that, what's the question type? So what's the question type for me? At least I start there. Then what's the conclusion in the stimulus? Is there an argument there? Is there even a conclusion? Then look for the evidence. Look at the method of reasoning. For the review process, that's where the Socratic review method comes in, which is something I'm covering so much throughout the course. And one key part of it is engaging you by getting you to actually do something. Not just to reread and reread or look at explanations, but for you to actually articulate something about your understanding of the question and create something based upon your understanding. Yeah. Have you watched any of the logical reasoning workshops or the reading comp deep dives? Not yet. I've been focusing on, I've been doing the logic games first because of the course that I'm doing with you, the study plan that I have. So I haven't gotten to logical reasoning yet as much. I mean, I've done it with, I did this book before. I did this entire book before I started your course. And it was really great, but I'm struggling with logical reasoning, so I want to get on it because that's like my worst section. I mean, that and reading comp. Okay, so you'll get there when you get there. Yeah. You'll get there before long. In the meantime, though, it sounds like what you need is not more information because that book looks pretty big. And I see you've got the stickies there. You've worked through it, but you still are where you are. So it's not that you need more information or more to memorize or more drills to do. You need to change the nature of your prep such that it's actively engaging you. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the book was great with teaching me like how to find the arguments and would give me exercises to help with those things. I still struggle to do it while I'm doing the test and do it while I'm
I'm practicing the LSAT. So then I know that what's wrong with me is the nature of my prep, and yeah. So,
but you can make it. You can make a change there. You can make a change there, as you said. You're going for August, so you've got roughly 3 months. Speaking now in May, we're speaking now in May, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that the default mode of studying that typically works in other contexts doesn't work for the LSAT.
Yeah.
Because you can't just complete textbook chapters and do drills and do questions and look at explanations to just get it. The LSAT's harder than that, and there's nothing to memorize here. It's about changing the nature of the way that you think, and that requires active engagement. A lot of learning in school is learning by rote, memorization, following someone else's strategy.
Yeah.
Applying a formula. The LSAT doesn't typically lend itself to that. A lot of it's informal logic that requires active engagement. And logic games in particular require some creativity, like solving a puzzle.
Yeah. I think like that's why I struggle with logical reasoning and reading comp, is because it's more abstract than, I don't know if it makes sense, but it's more abstract than logic games where I'm engaged the entire time and I am doing something the entire time to figure out the problem. While in logic games, not logic games, in reasoning and reading comp, I lose my focus so much. I don't feel actively engaged in the stimulus or the questions. And getting past that is like trying to like punch a wall. Yeah.
So let's say we want to engage you in logic games to start. We've talked about logical reasoning a little bit. Logic games involves creativity, taking ownership, trying out different things and seeing what works. There still can be a step-by-step process there.
Yeah.
What's your process currently like for logic games?
So for logic games, a lot of them are hit or miss for me. Like I'll either totally understand the game or not understand the game at all. But I'll read this stimulus and I'll make my diagram, and then I'll try and piece them together to see how they work together. And then for each question, I make another copy of the diagram for myself so that I can write it out if I need to. Sometimes I don't need to because it'll be in the rules. But I'll generally write out like a way that the game can work with each question. For the ordering questions, those take the longest, but they are the ones that I just have to knock them out by reading each rule, and then I can get to the correct answer. The other ones, the placement ones where you put a letter in the diagram in their place, those I find to be a little bit easier. But the more abstract ones, like changing the rule, or if this happens, then if you have to change the rule, or if you have to I'm trying to think of the word.
Rule substitution, right?
Rule substitution is one of them, and then there's more abstract ones, like I can't think of it right now, but there are other questions that I struggle with too, like where if you're gonna take something out.
It's beside the point. We don't need to get into all the details here. There's rule addition, there's rule subtraction, there's rule substitution most commonly out of those. Then there's local questions, there's global questions.
Yeah.
But what's going to help you with all of those is having a structure in place for when you're initially starting the game. So you read the initial paragraph, you diagram the rules, you look to make inferences. look to make connections. You see which variables appear in multiple rules. Those can oftentimes be combined in some way. And so if you could just number these steps for yourself and make it your own as well. There are other things you could add in, like as you get into the questions, making it a habit to reuse your previous work.
Yeah.
Or to see, can you make more inferences up front? Can you make multiple main diagrams? You talked about making a copy of the diagram. That's fantastic. You should typically have several different mini diagrams associated with a particular game. So getting into those habits and maybe doing it more deliberately at first, and then doing it enough that it becomes routine and you just do it automatically.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with making inferences up front. It's been getting better, but sometimes there are games that really need those inferences, and I just struggle figuring them out until I get to the questions.
That's going to happen sometimes, and that's okay. The question is, once you're in the place where you're doing it over the course of the game, as you're solving the questions, you then let those inferences you discovered midway through continue to inform what you do moving forward. And you also see if it could help you out with anything you may have had trouble with earlier in the game.
Yeah.
And just through practice alone, you'll get to the point where you're making more inferences up front, but you also get comfortable making more local specific diagrams, even in the absence of having those upfront inferences, where you can still progress regardless whether you made them or not.
Yeah.
And in the course, we've got the logic games classes every single week. We have the study groups every week. We have the recordings of all the previous classes. So there's a lot you can work through there, aside from just the foundational section of the course, in the workshop section as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I wanted to start with that probably sometime this week. So I know it's on your website, right? I just have to sign in.
Yeah, just join right on the sidebar in the workshop section. You'll have the entire class calendar and all the RSVP links.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. Anything else for today?
I'm not sure, but I think that's okay. Thank you.
Of course. Well, if anything else comes up, just shoot me an email, reach out. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.